Hey everybody, welcome. It's the SaaS Founder Show here back for another episode. I'm Tony Zayas. I am joined by Insivia's founder and CEO, Andy Helco. Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic here. Still hanging out at home since we're doing the remote work, and excited to do another SaaS Founder live show here today and have a great conversation with some interesting people.
Yeah, for sure. So with that, this week our special guest is Ted Michael from Thankful. He's the founder of Thankful, and we'll talk all about Thankful. So with that, let me bring Ted on here. Hey Ted, good morning. Thank you for joining us nice and early.
Yeah, nobody said that I had to be interesting. Like that was not pre-cleared. I don't know about that.
You didn't see that in the 40-page contract that we had you sign?
No, along with my soul, which you're welcome to, but
yeah,
there's a no returns policy on that as well.
Exactly.
Ted, before we get into Thankful and your career and kind of everything that you've done, because very interesting kind of list of things that you've done. I want to hear first of all about your experience in the music industry. You had some pretty cool background at Capitol Records, at Interscope Geffen, and even a marketing consultant to Rolling Stone. So love to hear a little bit about that and how that how anything you've learned in that realm has helped you in the sound.
I learned a lot of bad lessons. What did I learn from Keith Richards that I could possibly talk about? How to survive. Yeah, I certainly, I've probably been voted least likely SaaS founder in my class.
Cool.
Yeah, so I set up an ideas factory in the 90s, which was basically just, I came up with crackpot ideas, found people that were either willing to do them or pay for them, sometimes both. And that was, huge, great indigenous people's triptychs, spoken word videos, a couple of books, just anything, one of the books was we had a whole bunch of historians, like very famous historians, write reviews about films based on historical themes, because the bet was, when I was very drunk one night, that all Americans only get their history from the movies. So, which is sort of
a little true,
not wholly true, but it's not wholly untrue either. Anyway, so
yeah, right.
So the wackiness of it all, or the craziness of it all, like sort of coincided with the dawn of the internet and digital media, etc. And it got the attention of a lot of artists like the Bowies and Rolling Stones and Peter Gabriels of this world. So I ended up working with all of those as well, sort of by coincidence more than design. In fact, my entire the trajectory of my career has largely been this slalom of I don't know, controlled by luck, more luck than judgment, and just being in the right place at the right time. So, what did I learn from the experience in the music business? Yeah, how to be the music business is often like, look, I was on the other side of the music business when I was part of a team at launch, Dave Goldberg's launch. We were trying to create a new digital music economy, and I was sort of faced with an intransigent business that didn't want to change. The music business, like, look, we sell CDs. Why do we want this digital nonsense? What do you mean a track economy? We can't have that. That's going to destroy our business. So I learned how to deal with intractable problems and how to convince people that, don't argue with technology, because technology is always going to win. Agility wins. The music business had to be very agile. You have to think very quickly. You don't have time for 7-year, deployment plans or requirements gathering. And you really have to understand your audience. The Rolling Stones fully understand their audience. They know what they want, and they go out of their way to try and deliver, the best show possible. So I learned a lot. I also learned, it is also at times the most venal place on earth. It makes the Circus Maximus look like a pleasant place to be. Like it's a blood sport at times. And I learned that is not an environment that I want to bring to any company that I co-found. So I brought the lesson there was not a good one. It was like, okay, I don't want to, this idea that whatever happens, I need to understand either how to take credit or assign blame quickly. That is not the environment that I want to build. So that's a very long-winded way of answering your question.
No, but those are great insights. Know your customer. I mean, it's pretty interesting to kind of look at a completely different world and industry and say, look, I mean, there are some foundational things that just, are intrinsic to anything that you're doing.
One of the most valuable lessons I learned was actually from Bowie, because he was a hero of mine growing up. And they say, never meet your heroes because they'll always let down. He was definitely not in that camp. He was wonderful, and still sadly missed today. What he saw the opportunity that technology brought as a challenge for sure, but an opportunity. And while the music business was thinking about what digital media was going to do to it, Bowie was thinking about what it could do for it. And that distinction is something that I've always brought with me, including into Thankful and AI. And instead of thinking about when you're faced with a problem, instead of thinking like, oh, well, this has been done to me, damn it, we've lost a customer, this is the worst thing that's ever happened, etc. If you can flip that and think, well, what is this, what is this actually doing for us? It's freeing us from, to be able to do other things or whatever. Then that change in perspective allows you to move. And it stops you, if you're always worried about what's next, you don't tend to move. Well, there was a great I met Steve Jobs a few times, and his constant thing about the music business, when do you think the music business will let go of the side of the pool? Because it just wanted to hang on to the past for dear life, and it's not surprising. The music business was a multi-billion-dollar business, so it was it was fine for startups like Launch, etc. to go, no, just let go of the side of the pool. If I had a multi-billion-dollar business, I might think twice too. But eventually, I guess pain is the touchstone for all business growth. They got into enough pain that they finally did, but it took a long time. And even in subscription, it was like when they first saw subscription, it was like, we're not doing that. We've just run the numbers. We're going to be underwater. This is a terrible idea. They didn't have the faith that it would work. And that it turned out that they were wrong. Thank goodness. So anyway, all of that sort of brought me into technology, etc. So I was the COO of a computer vision company, and then that led me to consult for a whole bunch of AI companies, which then led me to Thankful and my co-founder Evan Tan. So that's sort of there's not a straight path.
Evolution
for sure.
So what maybe dive into that. I'm kind of curious that path that you took to get into the product, and then what was that moment? Was it you were brought in with someone else's idea? Did you have an epiphany? Did you have a pain? Like, what got you into actually creating Thankful?
That is I should probably have a fancy, origin story by now. Like it should be like I was surfing on the beach in Venice, and then the shark came along, and then I thought customer service. No, it wasn't quite like that.
You can make one up. It doesn't have to be true.
Well, I tell you, it has to have blood. If it bleeds, it leads. Actually, it was a little bit more pedestrian than that. I was looking for a challenge. I was introduced to my co-founder Evan Tan by his brother, who has been a friend of mine for a couple of decades. And Evan was building an AI wine assistant, which is, that's good, I guess, but not necessarily a problem that I had. I had a lot of friends in the wine industry. It wasn't a burning issue. And so I met him, and I just thought, oh, that's interesting. That's good. I wonder whether we could do something in the future, maybe. And so what happened was, I guess the epiphany was not really an epiphany at all. It was just abject pain, sorrow, and desperation. I ended up in the 2 weeks of hell with various forms of customer service that were going wrong. Whether it was Blue Cross Blue Shield or Spectrum Cable or 3 or 4 e-com companies, you know, the simplest email would take 5 days to reply to, or the chatbot would get it wrong, or, you know, like, hey, I'm having trouble tracking an order. Here's your track order link. No, you idiot, I'm having trouble tracking the order. You know, that stuff. It all collided in a sort of concertinaed in a 2-week window, where I was virtually not able to do anything else. My entire life is consumed with this nonsense. And the weird thing about it was that, and this was a focus group of 1, that I had the expectation that somehow technology, because it had fueled my my expectation or entitlement for immediacy, that it was going to deliver on that, you know, somehow, and it wasn't. When it was immediate, it was wrong. So I was faced with those Hobson choices of, like, I either wait for a so-called expert, but I have to wait weeks, or I can get an instant answer and it's wrong. Great, what a foul pact with the devil that is. So. So I had no interest in customer service. I'd been in a call center like everybody else had for, you know, briefly for a holiday job. It was, you know, it's a wretched job. So I approached it as a customer, you know, not from somebody in the industry, but as somebody that needed to be served by the industry and was not. So that was my entree into it. And so, you know, we talked about it, and then we did a little bit of research, and I was into, you know, I looked for all the blogs, having been in marketing, where, you know, there's 3 or 4 blogs every day that you can disagree with them, but they're always sort of interesting. It's like marketing in the avocado, like, oh, I never thought of life like that, or, you know, like Zen in the art of motorcycle maintenance, all that. Whereas in customer service, the best I could come up with was, you know, how to better manage a call center, which could have been written in the 1950s. It was dreadful. Right. And it was dreadful for me because I was happy to steal other people's ideas and couldn't. So I shouldn't be telling you that. So anyway, the end result was that I'm not an angry person. I've never been an angry person. Apple Care only works when you throw the phone across the room once. When you throw the second iPhone across the room and it's shattered because you have hardwood floors, you end up paying $1,000. So Thankful was born after the second iPhone got shattered, I guess is the pithy answer. But so that was why it saved. Starting an AI customer service company was in the hope that it would save me a lot of money on broken phones, and I hope to save humanity from the cost of broken phones as well. It turns out that one of the tidbits of information that I did pick up was that I think it was from Forbes magazine, which was that in our average lifetime, each one of us will spend 43 days on the phone interacting with customer care. Now, which is like being exiled to the second or third circle of hell for 43 days. That's a long time. That's over 6 weeks of my life that I'm going to be spending in this crap. So the goal of Thankful is to do, the humanitarian goal of Thankful is to give back, 3 weeks of your life back. So you can spend it on the beach in Bali. You can spend it doing service work for the disadvantaged. Spend it however you like, but you won't have to spend it on the phone. And by the way, that 43 days, I am willing to bet that that's almost double if you have, Blue Cross Blue Shield or Anthem Blue Cross.
Well, that 43 days, I think about my kids with their phone. That's going to change because 20 years ago, people were predicting that, you'd spend 43 days tangled in the cord from the phone that was on your wall trying to get out.
Right. So we want to be the catalyst for that revolution for sure.
Exactly.
Because there can be nothing worse than waiting for something waiting for a customer support or waiting for a resolution to a problem that you think, and the simpler the problem you think it is, the quicker you feel it should be answered as well. What's taking so long? I just want to know how to return this. So anyway.
And the bigger the company, the worse their customer experience gets.
Almost uniformly, that is true. Correct. And that is part of the mission here is to and not wishing to overstate it too much, but is to revolutionize the whole concept of service. We actually believe as a company, better living through service, and then, better service through technology. It's a sort of two stack. service is always the last thing that any company thinks about. And I understand why. It's the messiest. It's like, the rest of the, especially in when you're dealing with a lot of digital stuff, the rest of the customer journey can be tracked in a almost Star Wars-like data-driven way. You get to the customer service bit and suddenly you're back 2 centuries and you're fighting in 1917 and it's trench warfare and there's blood and dysentery and mustard gas and it's just awful. So I understand why it's the last thing. The problem with that thinking is, it's a burden, a cost center. It's a problem that needs fixing, as opposed to an opportunity. This goes back to the David Bowie thing. So the problem is that as the rest of the customer journey has largely been commoditized, all insurance companies are pretty much the same, most e-com companies pretty much the same, offering the same product, roughly the same price, etc. It is the service part of the customer journey, the customer experience, that is now the defining characteristic for the customer. So now, it's the most important thing from the customer and it's the least important thing from the brand, and that expectation gap opens wide. And we're trying to solve for that expectation gap and allow companies the ability to put service first and be part of that customer service revolution that is happening with or without us. And by the way, we started the company 4 years ago, and that was I wouldn't have even dared to tell somebody like, I think there's going to be a revolution, because it seemed a long way off. Now I'm actually behind the curve. It's like, yeah, of course we know that. It's happening now. And we started in e-com because e-com is the pointy end of that stick. It's the sharp end, because there's no switching costs. When an e-com company isn't doing what you want it to do, it takes you 2-3 seconds to cut and paste your credit card into their competitor, and you lose, the brand loses that customer forever. Like they'll never even, not only will they not buy, they won't even visit the site again. So this idea that I found it curious that any brand or company would spend all this money trying to gain my attention, like all this marketing money trying to gain my attention. As soon as I'm struggling with something, their first thought is, let's get rid of Ted as cheaply and quickly as possible and deflect him. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So we feel like that service is a first contact, that actually customer service isn't a problem that needs deflecting. It is the first contact of a relationship. So you can think of customer service, and we do. Thankful is a relationship engine, and our goal is to build better relationships between brand and customer. That's the end goal, and we're still I'd say we were in the first mile of a marathon for that. But we are the only people that are looking at the problem in that way. We do believe there's a service economy. We believe that service economy will eventually take more money from the pot than marketing will, because I think that service actually is marketing, and it is the new marketing. And whether it's technology or a person, if that person has helped you out when you're struggling, there was a relationship there. Like I said, whether it's an intelligent AI bot like Thankful or whether it's a human, doesn't really matter. Like, I don't care. I'm sure you don't care. As long as it's fixing my problem in a personalized way. So I feel like someone, the whole idea is, can we treat everyone like a someone? I don't care what it is. But I think that this idea that the relationship can foster from that first contact and move forward, and can that channel then be a marketing channel? For sure. We're not there yet, but it's coming. If you will interview SaaS founders within 2 years where that question won't even exist. The demarcation between marketing on the one side and retention and service on the other, that will cease to exist. And I think it's 5 years. That means probably it'll be 2 years.
Right. No, I love that, the expectations gap. And, it's funny, in talking to SaaS founders, they're so focused in the beginning on like growth and acquiring customers, and they're not thinking about that retention side. Like, at some point, we've got to keep these people, and then we've got to use them to try and sell more product, because it becomes our marketing by having happy customers and, reducing the churn. And I completely agree, but it's like the last thing that they think about for whatever reason. And they just, it's crazy.
I also think just in terms of how we approach the problem, we did everything the way you shouldn't. It's my contrarian nature. Like, we actually did go to brands and we said, what would you like? And the brands told us pretty specifically what they would like, which turned out to be a sort of a better mousetrap, build a better deflection tool. The one we have isn't working. It's too dumb, build a more intelligent version of it. And Evan and I started to do that. And we couldn't, it took 2.5 years to build the first tech stack that we felt was good enough to launch. And it was good enough to launch because, in fact, we abandoned the brand request and went for our gut, which was the customer request. We wanted to serve the customer. And so the mantra was, let technology do what technology does best so that your humans can do what humans do best. And the whole goal was, how do we serve the customer better? As opposed to, how do we serve the brand better? And that shift in perspective actually enabled us to build an entirely different tech stack than we would have done had we just focused on the brand and their needs. So we did everything that I used to advise SaaS companies not to do. I did not follow my own advice at all.
Now, does that end up playing into the sale to the brand? Is that, do they now realize, okay, by you having focused on the customer, you went the right way and it's going to make things better? Or is it now that you get in there and it's not meeting their expectations and you have to?
No, it's actually more than meeting their expectations. Again, like customer service is a very tricky, it's a tricky business. It's not easy. The mistake that I made, I'm not sure, again, my co-founder, Evan, thought about it as simplistically as I did, but I really did think that we would get a product going. He's a genius developer. I'm pretty smart. I thought, well, 9 months, we'll bang something out and it'll be an alpha and we'll start. 2.5 years later, we were still bootstrapping this thing. Wow. And it was like, oh dear, is this ever going to work? Like, the trouble with AI is until you press launch, you don't know whether all this work and all this code is actually going to function and do what it says it does on the tin. So it was great relief when it actually did. But it again, it was the lack of, let's say, maybe just a lack of vision and imagination. You're like, what could be done? Because when you're in it, all you want to do is make the pain stop. Like, I'm not meeting my SLAs. I'm not, like, I have queues of people. Everybody's angry with me all the time. Customers are angry with me. My own staff is angry with me. The rest of the company is angry with me. Just make the pain go away. So I totally get it. It's not like there's no fault on them whatsoever. Imagine waking up every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning and not being interviewed by you gentlemen, but literally standing under a waterfall of shit. Yeah. That is exactly how, that's pretty much their life. And, so the idea of, well, reimagine customer service in a new light or whatever, like, no, just make the pain go away. So, like we do, I guess that's by fixing the problem for the end customer, we actually end up overachieving for the brand.
The point that I like, and I just kind of want to pull out though, is, we deal with a lot of companies where they're selling to someone that then the software is used for an end user, and they think a lot more about who they're selling to. And I just love the thought process that for other people that are looking at that model where they're really creating a service for someone at the next level, that they're really focused on them and thinking about them and going in their shoes rather than staying in their customer's mindset.
Yeah. For sure. I think that in general, much as that sort of tends to work against some SaaS principles, I think it's the right way of working at it, because if you're my enemy's enemy's my friend, if you're fixing for the customer's customer, then surely you're fixing for the customer. You just then need to make sure that your software is easy to use, is cost effective, etc. But if you can, the tricky thing is actually solving the problem for the end customer. The rest of it is just functional, operational. Like, how do we make sure that the deployment is, days, not months or, years, so we looked at sort of, again, AI deployments, and sometimes they can take years. Who wants to wait years for this thing? Like, you want it in days. I have a problem, fix it. So it wasn't that we completely ignored the brand. They had certain criteria that we wanted to meet. it had to work out of the box. That I didn't want to have, they shouldn't have to wait, again, months and months of training on their own tickets and stuff. We have a shared training model. So out of the box, it works. So it wasn't like we completely ignored everything or their requirements. But the trickiest thing was, how do we fix it for the end customer? If you're happy, then you're happy with the brand. Then we've done our job. Their relationship is built. That we've done our job.
Yeah, that's cool.
AI is such a buzzword these days.
It's hideous, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and it's funny because I know so many founders. They kind of have the mindset, hey, if we just throw that onto our product, it's going to get some interest. And I'm kind of curious your mindset of the industry of AI and the reality of what products are out there that are pretending to be AI versus ones that really are, and where it's going.
Don't get me started. Oh, yes.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
it's true. I mean, from a sort of investor multiples point of view, it is like that. Just add AI.
100%.
Those sort of the Desert Storm troops. They end up with those sachets of food. It's just like white powder, and you just add water, and it becomes like a 3-course TV dinner. I feel that AI is like that, and I had investors like, oh yes, that AI, that's fantastic. Is there a blockchain element to that as well? I'm like, no, what are you talking about? But AI plus blockchain, oh, that's amazing. No, most AI is not AI. It is like, at the moment, look, 2 Excel spreadsheets and a pivot table suddenly becomes AI. Oh, it's machine learning. It's learning from one column to the next. It's not, it has become, from once it was a liability, it has now become this marketing buzzword. So we don't even like, I don't like the term. It doesn't matter how you do the magic trick. The point is, does it do the magic trick? In our case, is the machine learning good enough to really understand the nuance of what you're asking? Because again, the problem with customer service, and something that I didn't know at the time, is that there is no 80-20 rule. It is all a world of edge cases. So you have to understand, like when that track order example I gave you, so there's 50 or 60 different versions of that all lead to different solutions. None of which are, here's your track order link. It's like, it's not working. Shopify hasn't put the link in yet. I haven't got it. Or like the FedEx doesn't give me any information. They're all that nuance. Does the AI understand enough of the nuance to actually be able to, give me a relevant answer? And that's where your AI has to really function. The idea, because again, AI could be just target words. Oh, you said return. I heard you say return. We're going to give you, here's the FAQ about returns. That is not AI. That is literally 2 or 3 weeks of code. That's easy.
Right.
Whereas again, when you push this into the wild, you find that people saying, hey, I need to return these yellow blue jeans for a size larger. And then you get the link back saying, here's 5 FAQs about our returns. I'm like, no. I don't want to do that. I guess I want to exchange, but I didn't say exchange. I said return. All that stuff, all that nuance, we get. That's what we spent all this time and money building. And it turns out now, now that we're on the sort of slightly on the other side of that bell curve, it's fantastic. But at the time, it was brutal, because one thing after another, it still wasn't getting it's getting this, but it's not getting that. We lost our first customer. It was the worst experience ever. We lost our first customer because we got one answer wrong. It was a tiny customer. And again, when you're starting with AI, you just need data. You need a data set. But we answered everything correctly. We were getting stuff right, etc. One answer wrong. And it was, I think that some investor for the company wrote into their customer service channel saying, hey, I'd like to track my investment. How do I do that? And we said, hey, we think you want to try. They went and said, like, you got it wrong. And we were like, your humans get things wrong all the time. How can you possibly judge technology at a different, on a different scale, different yardstick to your humans? But they did. And it was, so again, we have worked tirelessly to try and make sure that we get as much right as we can so that so that there is a trusted relationship between Thankful and the customer and Thankful and the brand.
That's awesome.
It's that what's the Samuel Beckett quote that's always used, that's butchered. Oh yeah, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again. That's for 2.5 years, that was pretty much it. It was like, okay, is this ever going to work? Is it? And it's not that it didn't work, but it only worked in the sort of the perfect scenario of saying, like, I have a defective item, can I please return this? Like, it got that, but it didn't get when people are actually speaking and they're misspelling and they're not saying what they really mean, etc. Can AI really understand enough about the context of the person, the intent behind what they're saying, to be able to answer that problem well? And that is the tough thing. So yes, not all AI is born equal. Some of it just is on the tin and actually isn't in the product.
Right.
Buyer beware.
And
there is
really
no recipe.
become that buzzword for sure.
It has, and like I said, blockchain, I guess, would be the other one. And if you can combine the two things, I think it makes a great investor deck, but not really necessarily a great product.
So Ted, you said the 2.5 years where you kind of felt like you didn't get past that point. When did the breakthrough happen with your solution?
When, like, it did happen on our first, when you build this sort of rocket ship, but you don't actually know whether the rocket will actually achieve escape velocity until you press launch. This is the terrifying thing about it. You kind of, all this time and effort, and then you hit launch. You go like, I don't know, maybe it'll blow up on on the launch pad. When it started working and it started answering questions, I guess the real breakthrough happened when Evan showed me a response that the Thankful agent had that I didn't get. Like, I wouldn't have got it. Like, I would have actually picked the wrong thing. And I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. that's like how, that's some wicked understanding.
And that's AI.
And our again, you can sort of think of our technology split into 3 bits. There's the understanding bit. Do we really understand what you're saying? And then understanding what you're saying is kind of useless unless we can take an action, unless we can actually resolve the problem. So, can we resolve enough of your problems to make it worth deploying us? And we do, we started with 1 or 2 things, and now we do over 50 things. So, lots of the basics like, returning things, exchanging things, changing your schedule, in insurance, it would be, like I need to, upgrade, downgrade, etc. All that stuff we do. I need to change my driver's ed lesson from 3 o'clock to 3:30. Things like that we can do. And in e-com, it would be, I need to pause my subscription, etc. But it can get much more complex than that. We can actually, suggest. There's a difference between, let's say, I'm skipping around here. There's a difference, again, in nuance and understanding between, I need to pause my dog food subscription because I'm moving to Poland. And I need to pause my dog food subscription, or I need to cancel my dog food subscription because I've been furloughed because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Those 2 responses, even though it's the same action of cancel, could require and should require a different route. One is, well, you moved to Poland, so we don't deliver to Poland, so good luck, thank you very much, hope you come back, enjoy Poland. And the second is like, can we give you 50% off, or, whatever the brand wants, can we give you 50% off for the next 2 months? We're sorry to... Does your AI allow those kind of in-depth, nuanced replies? Yes. Again, there's a rules engine. We've created this for you so that you're treated as an individual. The one thing as a customer that you want is you want to be known. You want to be known by the brand. I've spent this money with you. The least you can do is know me. That means I don't want to go through the torture of what's your name, what's your email, don't you know I'm chatting with you, or I'm email. You can see my email. Why are you asking me these redundant questions? And I don't want to feel standardized. I want to feel valued. And great service makes you feel valued and looked after. And if you're valued and looked after, you're much more likely to be loyal to that brand or that company. So great service and lifetime value are absolutely inextricably linked.
You talked about 2 years to getting to, the launch button. I'm kind of, you know, was that an MVP, like minimum viable product, that it took 2 years?
Yes.
Well, and most founders look at, you know, how quickly can I get something out and then iterate on it. I'm kind of curious, like, was that
we would have done the same thing.
So,
most founders do that because they don't want to spend all this money, like that, when you don't actually know whether it's going to work or not. So we were the same, but we couldn't get the product to the point where it was accurate enough. Again, the whole goal was, you know, we were using Bayesian classifiers and we couldn't get it over 85% right, and which is pretty much the industry standard. But when you think about it, 85%, that means it's wrong 3 times out of 20. That is not a good batting average. I mean, that's very wrong. Like when you're saying, hey, I need to return this, and it comes back saying, yes, we shipped to Sweden. You know, like, yeah, exactly. Wrong. False positive wrong. So, you know, could we get it over 90? Can we get it over 95? And at times we're like 99.98% accurate. I mean, like, so that was the goal. Again, if you're going to provide great service, it wasn't like we were perfectionists. We just didn't think that we could actually bring something to market that didn't work that well. So it had to work better than everybody else. That was the sort of the criteria. We were going to, you know, and frankly, the bar was set pretty, as I just suggested, the bar was set pretty low. I mean, there's some pretty Neanderthal technology out there that is, and when you think about customer service, you think about the help desk as sort of the plumbing, that, you know, they're the ticketing, foundational technology. It's the plumbing, but what's the most important bit is the application layer next to the customer. You know, like, I don't care about the plumbing. I'm glad it's there, but the customer only cares about the water that's coming out of the faucet. Like, that's the water that comes out of the tap is the thing that's important to them. So we want to be that intelligent application layer around the customer. And at the moment, you know, all the clevers that are going on for a brand are sort of denuded by and diminished by this application layer that is pretty Neanderthal. Like, in the end, you know, instead of talking to your customer in an erudite, you know, personalized way, you're clubbing them over the head with a sort of woolly mammoth bone. And that's great if the customer didn't care and if service wasn't important to them and they weren't in charge, you know. But guess what? The customer's in charge now. So it really matters. Getting that communication to the level that the customer wants, not that the brand thinks is cost effective, is super important. So, you know, the two facets that have changed everything is the customer's in charge, and worse, the customer knows they're in charge, which gives them all the power. So all we're doing is trying to be that sort of intelligent application layer. And it took much longer than I wished it. Especially when it's your money. I mean, like, both Evan and I have had successful exits before, so it was okay. But when it's your money, you know, like flying out the door, it is a deeply unpleasant experience after a while. It's like, you know, gut remodeling a house that you never think is actually going to finish. And it's like, is the house ever going to stand? You know? Or is it just the first wind that blows, it's going to all fall over? So it's certainly a little bit of a high wire act, and thank God it worked.
You bootstrapped it on your own, and did you look for funding or get any funding?
Yeah, again, after 2.5 years, we looked for funding. We got the funding. We were lucky in that as soon as we launched this thing, it was reasonably, you know, there was traction because, again, it did things that other people couldn't, etc. It was solving a problem that everybody, you know, that seemed to be an intractable problem to solve. You know, my customer, like, the social and just general digital media meant that access to the brand was easy. You know, like, suddenly you didn't have to write a letter. You know, writing a letter is a big barrier to entry. It has to be a real problem for me to write a letter, post a letter. Like, now it's like I can just tweet like how much I hate the brand. You know, I'm sitting in the middle seat on an American plane, and I'm like starting to like, is this plane ever going to take off? An American can answer back or not. It's a very public, reputationally damaging business now, customer service. So the purpose of I forgot where I was going to go now. The reasoning behind what we were trying to do was to create to sort of limit that expectation gap. between what a brand, what the customer wants of the brand and what the brand is able to deliver. Because of the access, suddenly 10 times more people are hitting you up, and their expectation is that they're going to get an answer 50 times faster than they can possibly do it. So technology has to figure into that equation, and it is a very human-like, touchy-feely world. So it's not like you can just automate. It's not like session replay tools, and you can see how people see what people are doing. There's kind of three voices of the customer, if you like. There's what the customer is saying publicly about you in the Twitter sphere. There's what's the customer doing on the website. It's pretty easy to track. There's a number of technologies that can do that. And then the voice of the customer. What's the customer struggling with? What are the things that are blocking the customer from being happy? And at the moment, there's nothing. There's no understanding of the customer, et cetera. There's no data that's coming back that allows the brand to get better. And if you sort of, again, view this as every problem that a customer is having is an opportunity for the company, the brand, to improve, then suddenly that problem is an asset. If you can collect the data and look at trending, et cetera, and that's the next thing, again, those three sections, the understanding, the action. The third one is that business intelligence. Can we give you actionable data from what is now the totally unstructured voice of the customer? All there is anger and upset and discontent and fury. Can we actually give you actionable data and say, you know what, here's some of the problems that here's the operational problem, because basically your customers are telling you everything you need to know about your business, your price, your policy, your people, your process, etc. The trouble is that it is buried under this sort of waterfall of frustration. So divining any kind of actionable data is not an easy trick, and that's what we're doing at the moment.
Shifting gears a little bit, Ted, when we were talking about the music business, you said you learned kind of a lot of the bad habits, the what not to do. So I'd be curious, as you're growing the company, what does the team look like, and how have you used some of those lessons from a culture standpoint?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Most of the lessons that I learned from the music business were not how to do the opposite of what I'd experienced. I guess I learned the hard way. I didn't want, I wanted to play, life is short. I want the place to be my superpower. I only have one superpower, and that's team building. I build great teams. So I had the opportunity when I founded this thing with Evan to build what I consider to be world-beating team. And part of that world-beating team is that that we get on, that we have a common goal, that there's no sort of superstar. I dealt with superstars all my life. The last thing I wanted to do was deal with rock star developers. I have zero patience for that. I want people that put the interests of the many in front of the interests of themselves. Like I said, service runs through the DNA of the company in general. It's not just yes, it's a way of hopefully us making money as well, but it's an important facet of what the company is. So yeah, as far as team building is concerned, there were a bunch of criteria that I use that are largely built from that compass that I learned from the music business of what not to do, how not to. But that's not true, because there were some great teams as well. So it's not that it was all bad, but I realized, life is short. The last thing you want is people screaming at one another. It's just not, that's not how you want to conduct a business. You want, here's the North Star. Let's all row in the same direction and get there, and get there with a sense of humor as well. Yeah. Especially in a year like this year, you have to have a sense of humor to get through it. If you don't have a sense of, if you can't laugh at yourself, you're definitely missing the biggest joke.
Very Monty Python of you.
Well, no, it's true. Look, gallows humor is essential. I think in 2020, unfortunately, it seems to be the most appropriate response. What else is it going to throw at us?
Yeah, right. You know, the interesting thing about teams, so I do think every founder that we've talked to in this show and before that, and folks that we deal with, they talk about building great teams. You know, and the first thing that comes to my mind as I hear it over and over again is, so how do you find these folks, and is there a limited pool of them? You know, and the question that kind of came to my head is, you know, can someone great be great for this company but not for another? You know, and really this idea that maybe the pool isn't as limited as, you know, we might think that it is to find great people. It's really just about finding those cultural fits and the passions, and there's something to building a great team that's not just, you know, this is their resume and what they've accomplished, but there's a lot more to it. I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on, you know, finding great people, and is it different than just looking at numbers on a white sheet of paper?
I think it's an interesting question. Let me try and think of a reasonable response. I think I have always found that there is a dearth of talent. Yes, there's fewer people than I would like that are genuinely talented. I have also found in technology that great engineers tend to attract great engineering. We have great engineers working at Thankful because Evan is a great engineer, and great engineers want to work for great engineers. So you build an environment of greatness by being great yourself. That's so that I think that it's true. It's like that it's an attractive, you know, there's a gravitational pull in that regard. As far as like, can an engineer thrive in one place and not thrive in another? I'm sure that's true. I'm trying to sort of think of the analogy that works, and there's a sporting analogy, isn't there? Like, so I'm a football or soccer fan. It's the Arsenal Football Club is the closest thing I have to an organized religion, and there are players that just they failed at Arsenal, and then they go to Bayern Munich and they're genius, and you're like, well, why weren't you genius when you were with us? What happened? You know, was it the coaching? Was it, you know, did we not get the best? Was it just the system that was different? You know, like, was it like, oh, we didn't have the system for you to thrive? And I think that there's an element. I think you're right. There's probably an element of that. There are cultures that people would thrive in more than others. You know, like for instance, we are in a very fast-moving, chaotic piece of the market, and if you can't move quickly and adjust and like, hey, but we said we were doing this last week, remember Tuesday, and we're like, no, you're changing your mind, and if you can't react to that quickly, and you like a steady state business. I'm not saying you're a terrible, you know, engineer or salesperson, but you probably shouldn't be at a startup where we're surfing that chaos and adjusting course the whole time, you know, based on different circumstances. It's not a nice to have. That's a must have. So I think part of it is environmental, like it's just like where you are in the business. There's certain people that are better with steady state businesses and thrive with that, you know, with that. That they know what they have to achieve in the next 6 months, 9 months. The business itself isn't necessarily going to change, you know. And there are people that love chaos. You know, as you can see from my resume, I'm attracted to chaos. And if chaos isn't around me, I probably will create it. You know, so it's a good thing it's around me. But so there are people that thrive in that as well and enjoy the challenge of trying to rein that chaos in or find a path through the chaos, you know, like, and so I think that there are definitely, but I it's my opinion that I think that there are fewer people than I would like that actually fit the bill, whether it's sales or marketing or engineering, you know, that actually that would really work. I do think that one of the upsides of the pandemic is it has freed us to be able to look at talent, not necessarily, you know, local.
Yeah.
Which used to be a criteria. It's one of the benefits. And there's
Right.
there's few benefits. I think that we've lost some of the serendipity that being in one place allows, and so that's some of that communication I do feel has been lost. But the advantage of remote work is that you can glean talent from places that in the past you probably would have been a barrier. So I think that's that's becoming less of an issue.
Yeah, I've had my business for 18 years, and I definitely have seen folks that have not done well in our organization go and thrive somewhere else. And I really do think it is, do they align with the vision? Like, do they get passion from that? Do they align with the culture and the other people that are there, the systems that you have in place? Does it fit? I do think there's something big to, it's not just about finding great people, it's finding, folks that really fit that, and they can become even greater than they are when they really fit. So there's probably people out there that might seem mediocre somewhere, but could be fantastic in the right environment.
I also think that one point I would probably make is that there's an element of leadership and training that is essential here. That culture just doesn't happen. It doesn't it's not a product of like, well, I woke up and then this company culture. It is a sustained. It's sustained work. And if you don't have, again, I did an awful lot of SaaS consulting. You have to have a North Star. Everybody has to be pointing in the same direction. And for that to happen, you need a really defined, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the mountain we're going to take. Now let's take it. So, for Thankful, it's like we want to give every customer access to great service by giving every brand, the ability to the technology to deliver it. So it's a pretty simple message, but again, customer first. It's the customer that's first, not the brand. If you get that, then the rest of it is like, how are we then going to create a culture that allows you to thrive with that mission? And again, that has been challenging this year. We have dealt with all sorts of things this year that we didn't think we would have to. Like, oh yeah, we don't have an office anymore, or we don't have an office we can go to, or oh, there's a fire burning 2 miles away. There's a lot of smoke. We didn't have smoke before. I have a salesperson that we're onboarding now who is in San Francisco, and he has no power because PG&E cut the power because there's winds and they're worried about fire. These are all things that in the normal course of events, non-2020, that these would not be challenges that we'd have to face. So we're, but again, facing it with, I keep going back to humor is super important to me, and runs through the company. You have to be able to laugh at this stuff. It's like, because if it's all about the money, like, oh, we've got to be successful. We're going to be successful. I truly believe we're going to be successful because we have that mission and because we can execute on that mission. If we start thinking about how much money and this, we'll screw it up. And so the North Star being our version of success is serving customers the best we possibly can. And that is, again, slightly different to some other companies. And then the company makeup is slightly different to that too. We're looking for people that fit in with that vision. Not necessarily, like I said, we have rock stars for sure, but they're not the prima donna engineer, prima donna salespeople that I've worked with before, where they may be able to pull stuff out, but the price you pay in morale and culture, etc., is a hefty price. And by the way, that is not. I didn't invent that sort of no assholes policy. That's Dave Goldberg gave me that on a plate and said, like, here's what you need to do. And he was my mentor for a long while until he passed away, sadly. But he definitely, again, he had access to great talent, and he didn't always use it because it came with a price, and he wasn't willing to pay the price in terms of the entire company culture, which sounds easy, but we're a team of 23, 24. We're a small team, so you kind of want rock. It's tempting to go like, oh, well, I want to rock. Get me the rock star. I have the benefit of having worked with the biggest rock stars on the planet, and I know what I know the price you pay for that. Put it that way.
Yeah, I do think this pandemic, the whole thing, the challenges we face, though, we were talking about this the other day with one of our clients, is like, challenges bring opportunities. And like you said, finding people in different folks, like we used to hire within a 25-mile radius, and we recently this year have hired a bunch of people in different other states. And, it's really intriguing. One of the hires that we just had, I think it's someone that we would have never looked at, if they were here in town and they just submitted a resume and they came in for an interview. But it being remote, I think opened them up to be working with us because they had some, specific needs in the way they worked. And, it opened us up to the mindset of you don't have to be here. You don't have to be in specific hours. Like, I think there's some amazing changes and opportunities that are going to come out of all of this year, like massive ones.
There's a great, I keep quoting, I probably shouldn't, there's a great Goethe quote, which I'm going to completely butcher because I don't speak German very well. But it's the, in the limitation first appears the master, is sort of the gist of it. Surely 2020 has been the year of weird limitation. Like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do this, I'm never going to do this. And your ability to create, wonder out of limitation is the key. There's the touchstone to success, I think. So you're absolutely right. I think that the goal has to be to use 2020 as the launch to something else. I've been on I'm sure you have, like lots of Zoom kind of calls about culture and how are we getting back to normal, like the bank and the investors running all these different kind of Zoom calls about getting back to normal. I'm like, I don't even know whether I want to get back to normal. What is normal? I'm not a huge normal person.
Right.
I don't do well in normal, like, and I want to reinvent normal. Like, why are we going back when we could be going forward? And like, I live in Los Angeles and I don't like traffic, so this is not a good thing. I don't want to go back to traffic. Can we not do that? Can we do something, so this idea of going back, as soon as somebody says that, I'm like, I don't like, there's certain things. Yes, I'd like to go to the cinema. I like going to see movies and I like to, the things that I would like to do, but do I want to just revert? Like, no, there's no reverting. Let's go forward, like always forward. And that goes for technology too.
I've loved working from home. I used to, went into the office every day, and now I'm here with my family. I have 2 young daughters, and it's just this amazing experience. And honestly, the other night I was thinking, this is what life should be like, is that I can go and meet with employees when I want, when it opens up and we get in conference rooms, but I'm here with my family, and then at nights we do what we want, you know what I mean? And I don't know. I agree with you. I don't think we should revert. And I think it's interesting, what life could be like if we say the norm doesn't have to be anymore.
Yeah, I mean, bringing it back to thankful. That's what this is all about. Is like, how do we reinvent this? Like, we have an opportunity now to reinvent. The ground literally has shifted from under our feet. Like, now, to go back to my original premise of like, what does this do for us, not do to us? Like, now what can we do with this? Okay, the ground has shifted. Where's the ground now? Where could it be? I think if we can keep that compass alive and fresh, then we'll all be better off. Then, well, how do I get back to the solid ground that I had before? Because it may never be. I mean, this is the entomology, like the disease specialists like this is. We've been very lucky that there haven't been that many pandemics, but there might be a whole slew of them coming. This may be the new normal. Like, how are we going to adapt to that? How are we going to sort of get the best out of the collaboration that we need as a team? And, there's certain people that don't thrive on their, because their home life is total chaos, or because they're sharing a flat with 5 people, and 3 dogs and a parakeet, and the parakeet keeps swearing while they're on Zoom calls, or, there's a, it's not ideal for everyone, and can we provide those people with alternatives so that they can thrive too? It is certainly, I'll say, it's probably more work. When you're in the same place, you can watch people's body language and their shoulder slump, and that there's a problem, or there could be a problem, that they're feeling depressed or whatever. It is very hard to see that in a Slack chat. So you have to be more attuned to that when somebody is not necessarily checking out, but when they're having problems, or are we listening to Are we listening to people when they're just talking about their family life because it's important, or the artwork that they have behind them, or, you know, can I not judge people's artwork, you know, like in their living rooms, or these are all challenges that no, I'm not judging. Actually, some of that's fantastic.
The three wise monkeys with the Monopoly Man. I love.
It's pretty amazing. It's very impressive. I like it, and I like the placement too. Yeah, so you know, it just brings up different challenges, but none of these are. I think these are great challenges to have. I mean, I do. You know, the cost to life has been extreme, but the opportunity that this thing has given, there's nothing I can do about that. What I can, the bit that I can change, you know, change what you can change, is that, you know, now can we re-envision work life in a different way that is better for everybody. And I think that's definitely, I think that's possible.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, Ted, I think that is a good note to end on, as we're pretty much out of time, but this was awesome. Some really insightful stuff. We appreciate you taking the time to, you know, share these insights and your journey with our audience. And I would just encourage everyone to go to thankful.ai, check out Ted's, you know, solution. You guys are doing some really cool things, and so we will keep our eyes on you guys, and we hope to keep in touch.
Well, listen, thank you very much for having me at this awful early hour. Hopefully I haven't waffled on too much. I apologize if I have.
Certainly appreciate it. So thank you for making the time for us.
Thank you very much indeed.
Anything that the viewers should check out about Thankful, or
well, they can hit me up on, I'm on Twitter at Ted Mico, M-I-C-O. You know, yeah, the website is a 1.0. The technology is fantastic. The more, you know, the surface stuff is a work in progress. So that's going to be changing over the next few weeks. You'll see it evolve.
Great.
Awesome. Well, thank you,
fabulous.
Ted.
Thank you very much, guys.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. We look forward to, you know, keeping in touch and seeing what you do with the company.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Take care.